We are in a series called Miracles in the Mundane, the Wonder in Everyday Connections. And so this series, if you weren't here last week, is about kind of really appreciating the wonder and the majesty and the miracles that are in the way that we connect with each other every day and in those connections. And it can be really easy to overlook the spiritual impact of some of those things. And so this is kind of taking a moment and looking at it. So last week was about curiosity, and today we are going to be talking about the power of emotions. And so I'm really excited to preach this message. I was supposed to preach this message a year ago when I finished my master's thesis. So I did my master's degree in organizational psychology, which is not the psychology of organizing things, which is what my dad thought it was when I sent him a picture of my acceptance letter. He was like, cool. He's like, I don't know what you're going to do with that. Good luck. It's the psychology of how organizations exist. So organizations, teams, kind of looks at how do we optimally communicate and function together in an organization. So whether that's work, church, a volunteer group, it doesn't really matter. If there's a group of people, how do we optimize the communication and the way that we function in that group? So I did my master's thesis last year, and that was a big paper I had to write. It was about 60 pages long. I brought it because I'm really proud of it. Look how beautiful it is. Thank you. And I had to write a theory portion of it and then an application portion of it. And they told me, my thesis advisor told me when I started, she said, pick a good topic because you're going to spend about 8 months with this thing every day. You're going to think about this. You're going to sleep and dream about it. You're probably going to cry over it. She was like, you're going to hang out with this thing, so you better pick a topic you like. So I started thinking, and I couldn't come up with a topic. I started really reflecting on what questions did I have about the space that I was going into and teams, and I started reflecting on kind of challenges that I had had in the past that I didn't have answers to. So I came from a church before this that had really toxic moments, particularly in the relational aspects of people within the church. And it was like you'd walk into a meeting sometimes, it was like all the air got sucked out of the room. You know the feeling? Like when you go in, it's really heavy. And you walked in, you were like, hey guys, I had a great day. And then you were like, just kidding. I'm going to go sit over there in the corner. It's not that kind of meeting. And then at the time I was doing this, I was at a job where I was having a really similar experience. Like there were just people there who had come in and I'd be like, let's work. I'm a person that shows up to work like, I'm so excited to be here. And there were people that were not there like that. And by the halfway through the day, I felt that. So I started wondering why is that? Why do our moods have such an impact on us? Which brings me to the topic for today. So we're going to be talking about emotional contagion. And so emotional contagion, the definition of it, this is what I wrote my thesis on, is the tendency to mimic verbal, physiological, and or behavioral aspects of another person's emotional experience and thus to experience/express, the same emotion. And so really, when you break it down, it's about the fact that emotions are contagious and that we can infect each other with our emotional experience. So my thesis was actually called Organizational Leadership Considerations Regarding Emotional Contagion in Work Teams, which is a really fancy way to say what leaders need to know about how emotions will impact their day. But the work that I did on the thesis, the reason this message came about is because it's not unique to your work environment, right? It's every team that you have. Your family is a team, your church community is a team, your general community is a team, and your work. And so that work is applicable here. The kind of broad definition of a team is a group of people who have a similar mission, who communicate and socialize together, and who complete tasks in relevancy to that mission. So you all are a team here, right? We all have a similar mission. Mission is Jesus. We show up, we do things related to that. And I've seen y'all in a family moment. You all socialize. You don't have a problem there. So lots of socializing. So last week we talked about curiosity and how when we have more curiosity, we can kind of create more compassionate connections with people. It leads us to empathy. But today I want to explore how emotional contagion impacts our connections with each other. Creating compassionate connections with others is our greatest strength. Yet because of emotional contagion, it's also our greatest vulnerability. So I want to talk pretty extensively today about the process of emotional contagion. I think it's a process that, on the surface, you're like, yeah, I get it. But when you kind of understand what's going on underneath it, it really highlights, you can really appreciate the spiritual implications of it. And then I will talk at the end about why it all matters and what the practical applications are. But I really want to kind of delve into what it is. And also, I'm going to get a little nerdy today. You all are just going to have to love me anyways. I really like this topic. It's something I'm really interested in. I told you I spent 8 months with it, hanging out, then wrote a big paper, and now I'm still thinking about it a year later. So I really like it. So I'm probably going to get a little nerdy. Just hang with me. So first scripture today is Proverbs 22:24-25. The New Living Translation says, "Don't befriend angry people or associate with hot-tempered people, or you will learn to be like them and endanger your soul." I really like the Message version because it's like they knew about this concept and then they wrote their verse. So don't hang out with angry people. Don't keep company with hotheads. Bad temper is contagious. Don't get infected. Yeah, I mean, right? I also really like, and I don't have this up there, but I'll just tell you, Proverbs 17:22, "A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." So, right, like, and we all know that. You come into a place where someone is angry or frustrated or upset, and it like I said, sucks the air out of the room. And so as Christians, we're called to be light in the darkness, salt of the earth, right? To spread love, to be peacekeepers. We've been called to a specific mission to go out into the community and do. But emotional contagion impacts it in two ways. One, if you're not aware of what's going on, it impacts how effective you can be in that mission. And then two, it should change the approach to the mission. So let's get into the theory. I want to kind of, first, before we get into that, I want to highlight how this has probably already showed up in your life and you didn't know. So first, I want you to take a second. I want you to think about a time when you were around someone who came into a room, right? They were all agitated. Maybe they constantly did that sighing thing where, like, they're not telling you what's wrong, but obviously something's wrong. They're like, over in the corner, you know. And maybe they're like mumbling under the breath, like, gosh, it's so annoying, right? You know. And you can tell they're all tense, like their face is really agitated, their body's really agitated. How did you feel after a few minutes around that person? You probably felt either irritated or angry after a few minutes. And it's probably because that person was irritated and angry, and now you are starting to feel that. I'm not quite there, but I like that one too. We're going to talk about that one in a second. So the other kind of opposite of that is, how did you feel at a time when you came into a room and someone was laughing and they were happy and they were full of joy and you witnessed their joy? You probably either smiled or you might have even laughed along with them, right? Emotional contagion, the easiest way I can explain it is this meme. I love this meme. I think it's hilarious. It's Sheldon from the Big Bang Theory. Emotional contagion is the reason that when you go to a wedding, you go to a wedding with someone, like go on a date, or maybe you're out with your spouse, all of a sudden you start looking at each other all lovey. You're like, I love you so much. That's why. It's because love is literally in the air. You are literally seeing the emotion of love, and you are like, I now have greater love. You also should not go to weddings with people you just started dating for this reason. This is a pro tip for you. Like, take that home with you, because you're going to get in the car and you're going to be like, we should get married. We've been dating a week. We should get married. Oh my gosh, I love you so much. So, like, that's just a pastor pro tip for you. Take that with you. Do with that what you will. All right, so emotional contagion has 3 stages to it. And they are, go ahead, you can go, thank you. So there's 3 stages: mimicry, feedback, and contagion. So the first step is mimicry. And this is the process that causes you to automatically sync up your nonverbal communication to somebody, right? You mimic them. So think if you go to a baseball game or something, you see someone get hit in the face with a baseball. What do? You probably go, ooh. You probably duck a little bit. There's a writing that I referenced in the paper I wrote from 1759 called The Sentiments of Morals. And they talk about how when people witness, they get a little more gruesome than we're going to get here. But when people witness really an amputation, they talk about that in there, that you will kind of move up your leg, ow, even though it's not happening to you, it's not. But they acknowledge that there's a connection between you seeing someone else's pain or struggle and you feeling it as well. So this process is what makes you cry or frown when you see someone cry, right? You see someone crying, they come to you, you probably make a sad face. And it's also what makes yawning contagious. So this is the thing that makes you want to mimic somebody else who's yawning. When I made this last night, it was 1 a.m. And I put this slide up and it immediately worked. It immediately worked. I was fighting it. So this happens instantaneously and unconsciously. You don't realize that you're doing it. You can't stop it, but it's happening. Really cool study. So from the University in Sweden, they did a study with electromyography, which is when they kind of measure the electrical impulses in your muscles. And they found that if they showed images to people of emotionally charged situations, so someone crying, someone laughing, the device actually picked up muscle contractions in the face. So even though you couldn't see the emotion on the face necessarily, the muscles were immediately reacting. So if they showed a picture of someone laughing, the muscles that cause you to smile were reacting in the face even if you didn't actually smile. So it's happening even if you can't see it. Also, mimicry is present in infants right after birth. So you can see this right away. You're born with it, happens right away. So that's cool. I just think that's an interesting fact. Like, you are literally built with the need to connect with someone else and mimic them. So that brings us to step 2, feedback. So this is when you see an emotionally charged situation and you respond through mimicry, and then your central nervous system starts responding. And this creates feedback to your brain that you physically confirmed that an emotional response is needed. So this means, like, if you see someone crying, right, you're gonna make a sad face. That's mimicry. But then that sends a message to your brain to see they're sad, make them feel sad is like the simplest way to explain feedback. Because they're gonna say, you made a sad face, give them the feeling of sadness now. And then I'll get to the next one in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So Elaine Hatfield was basically the founder of emotional contagion. She wrote about it in the 90s. It had been talked about a lot before, but didn't have a name and it hadn't been studied yet. And she found through her research that it was nearly impossible for your brain to have an emotion that was different than what your face was doing. So, like, if you smiled, it was nearly impossible for your brain to say, I'm gonna have a different emotion than what my body is physically doing. And she also found that if you physically act out an emotion, it is a direct predictor to what you will feel inside. So this is why, like, the Superman pose, if you ever heard about that, it's like when you do it, feel brave. This is why, like, the Superman pose works. It's also why, for kind of bringing it back into the church, why when you don't feel like worshiping, when you come in and you're like, I don't really feel like it, but you're like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it anyways. I'm gonna clap, I'm gonna raise my hands, I'm gonna do the things. It's why that makes you feel like you want to worship more. This is the thing. Like, you are creating feedback. And this isn't, like, deceitful. It's not like you're deceiving your heart. It's like a literal jumpstart button that's built in your body to be like, jumpstart that emotion. If I do the thing, I'll start to feel that way. And that it's built that way for a reason. You're not tricking it. You can't really trick yourself. Like, it's built that way for a reason. So that brings us to emotional contagion, the final phase, which is basically mimicry and feedback. They start to create a loop. And so you make the face, your brain says, oh my gosh, I feel sad. So then you feel more sad, which then, like, you get it, like, it starts to create a loop. So then you might start crying. And your brain says, see, they feel really sad, make them feel sad. And you kind of get into this loop and it keeps going. And even after you end the interaction, the loop can still kind of continue. So you can still feel the impact of conversations that you have with other people. Contagion is seen through multiple mediums. So it is the strongest when you are physically in presence with somebody, but it's been seen through text, social media, phone calls, written letters. You can see the effects of contagion. So while it's most strong when you're physically with somebody, you can have impact from all of those mediums. So note here, this is why your social media matters, right? If you go home every day and your social media is full of political division and war and tragedy and conspiracy theories and people who are angry, you will feel that. Even if you are not directly engaged in it, right? You're like, I'm not commenting on the stuff. But if that's all you're feeding yourself all day long is anger and frustration and sadness and hurt, that's why you get off Facebook and you're like, I feel really sad. Because you just took all the emotions of everyone in your Facebook group and you said, I would love to take that on. Versus, I recommend you follow some people who have cute puppies and babies, right? Like, just add some more people like that into your Facebook. You'll feel happier. Puppies and babies make everyone feel happier. And if they don't, I don't know how to help you with that. Just So there was a cool study that was done right after COVID on this. And it looked at how mainstream and social media impacted people's perception of fear during COVID. So it talked about how people kind of got themselves into a fear contagion loop because they were feeding on all these articles about how horrible things were. And then they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so much more scared. I'm gonna go look up more things about how scared I am. And then that was feeding how scared they were. And they ended up being in a place that wasn't like, I'm gonna be cautious and have respect for the situation and be smart. They ended up in a place that was like uncontrollable fear because their social media put them into a contagion loop with fear. So while contagion actually occurs more when you're physically with someone, you're actually at greater risk for contagion when you are on social media. And this is because, or for negative contagion, I should say. So there's negative and positive contagion. That's exactly what it sounds like. Negative contagion is negative emotions. Positive contagion is positive emotions. So you're actually at greater risk for negative contagion when you're on electronic formats because you can't hear tone and you can't see body language. So you are taking away a lot of things, and then you are just relying on the words. So I was going to put up a slide. I texted Linnell last night, like 1 a.m. I was like, I'm going to run an experiment. Don't report me to some board. So I texted Linnell. I just texted her K, period, with no context at like 1 in the morning. She woke up this morning. She was like, what does this mean? And I was like, what? I need it for my message. And she was like, what does that mean you needed that for your... What is happening right now? She showed me the whole thing. I was like, I just needed a screenshot for my message. And I didn't even use it. She was all caps. She's like, is this emotional contagion? What is happening? And I was like, are you stressed right now? I'm not angry. Are you stressed? I was like, I just needed a screen. I was going to talk about how, like, most of us get a K period text, and it doesn't matter if it's like your 90-year-old grandma who just doesn't know how to use texting. You're still probably stressed. You're like, are they mad at me? Did I do something wrong? So I apologize to Linnell for the harm that this emotional contagion message has caused her. She's up at Catholic Kids. She'll never know. But I apologize to her. So why does this exist in the first place? Like, why do we have this weird process that makes us feel other people's emotions? Well, it's really about us having social connections with each other. So emotional contagion is an important aspect in forming relationships with each other. Emotions create the basis for social connection, and the emotional contagion creates unity and connection with each other, right? It creates a space where we are on the same page. So when you share an emotion with somebody, you're on the same page with them now. You therefore can build a relationship with them. It's also the reason that you have kind of like mind reading power. That's what we would call it. So this is the reason that when you come into a room, you can kind of sense what's going on in the room. Or if you're around a group of people, you can kind of sense what's going on. And it's actually, it's a survival mechanism at its core. So it's the thing that lets you like sense threats. So if you're with a group of people and all of a sudden, like people around you start feeling really uncomfortable, you will probably look up and be like, what's wrong? Something feels off about my situation. And you're gonna start looking around. And it's the thing that helps you to know a threat is near you. And this is why negative emotional contagion is so dangerous to us, because most of us aren't like in life-threatening situations anymore. For the most part, it's like our coworker annoyed us. And so now we're cranky about that. But those negative emotions have a really high power in the contagion effect because your body wants you to pay attention to threats. So it says something bad is happening. Help them. Do something. It wants to lead you to action. But like if the thing you're upset about or scared about is like that you didn't do a work assignment on time and someone might tell you, like give you feedback about that, then it's like it's not the action you need to take, right? You're not like running from a bear. So we're kind of like not aligned anymore with what was going on there. It's also the basis for empathy. So emotional contagion kind of feeds into your ability to empathize with people. If you can't experience and understand what someone else is feeling emotionally, it's hard for you to empathize with them. So this is kind of the piece that like it ties in to what happens next, right? It's like a base layer to the fact that we can empathize. All right, so what's the practical part of this message, right? What do you do with this? I told you a bunch of information about, I think, a really cool topic. And so what do you do with this? So I have 3 practical steps for you. The first is that we need to be really aware of our emotional intelligence. We need to be mindful of our emotions because they shape our reality. So we need to consider, what are we bringing? We're called to be the light in the world, but are we showing up that way? How are you showing up into the room? Do you know even? Or are you just like a bull in a china shop? Just, I'm here. However I am, I'm here, right? Or are you actually being conscious of what you're saying and does it match kind of everything else? So if you come into a room and you say a word, but your body language and your tone doesn't convey that, first of all, it's confusing to the person on the other end who's saying like, they said one thing, but I feel like they're saying a different thing. That's confusing. And it's just gonna lead to problems. But also, are you aware of even what you're doing? Because if you're not, that's a really big challenge. So a couple scriptures, Galatians 5:22-23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law, right? We should have self-control. We should not just be bull in China shop kind of approaching our relational aspects in our life and just like, I'm going to just run in here however I'm feeling right now and just kind of spill all that all over the place and you all do what you want with that information. Like that we should have a little bit more control to the way that we approach people. And additionally, these are the things we should be bringing. It tells us right here. Scripture literally gives you a whole list of the things that you should be showing up with. That's how you should be showing up. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Think about good things. Stop filling your whole day with tragedy. It's not helping you. Take some time and think about good things. There are good things in the world. The world is broken, yes, and there is heartbreak and there's pain, and we should walk with people through that. We are also called to walk with people in their struggles, but your whole day doesn't have to be that. Like you could actually take some time and think on things that are lovely and pure and true and commendable, right? Like we should give ourselves space to do that. We want to make sure that we're really purposeful with what we say and do. Ephesians 4:29 says, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to all those who hear, right? So like it tells you right in there, if it's not the right thing for the moment, like you should be truthful still. So sometimes we're not always building each other up. Sometimes we're speaking truth, and that's hard sometimes. But we want to be mindful. We want to make sure that we're building each other up, that we're giving grace. We want to make sure that we're doing those things. We're being really purposeful. Also, another fun fact, leaders have high emotional contagion power in their groups, particularly if they're seen as an effective leader by their groups. And you may be thinking, I'm not a leader. I'm not a pastor here. It doesn't matter. You are a leader to someone. Somewhere in your life, somebody views you as a leader. If you are a parent, you are a leader. A child views you as a leader of their family. If you have friends and you're the only Christian they know, I hate to break it to you, but you're a leader. Like, you are bringing them everything that they know about what it means to be a Christian, whether you've been here a week or you've been here 17 years. It doesn't matter. Somebody somewhere views you as a leader. And so if you're showing up and you're bringing whatever into that space, that has high power. If you show up angry every time you hang out with that one friend, that's impacting them because you're part of their group and they view you as a leader. So we really want to be conscious of what an impact are we having on people, right? Second point is that we need to keep wise company. So I can't remember what cool thing I said this. Thanks. I was like, I wrote a cool thing. Surround yourself with those who fuel your faith. In the org psych world, we call this relational crafting, which sounds way cooler than it really is. It's basically that you can tweak who you hang out with to do better. Relational crafting. You can craft your relationships. That just really means, hey, maybe be mindful of who you hang out with. Proverbs 13:10 says, I'll read the New Living Translation first. Thanks, Heather. I had my slides out of order, but she caught up so fast. Walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble. I just put the message up here because the message version just gets right to it. They don't play games. Become wise with walking with the wise. Hang out with fools and watch your life fall to pieces. Dang. I read that last night. I was like, that's vicious. Like, just, But, I mean, it's true. They're speaking truth over here. All right, Heather, you can go back to that slide that I skipped. 1 Corinthians, we'll do the top one. Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Be careful with your heart. Be mindful. Who you hang out with? What are you feeding your life with? Are you being mindful of those things, or are you just kind of doing whatever you want, not thinking about it? Because everything you do is going to flow from your heart. And if you're not careful with it, then that's all going to flow out. 1 Corinthians 15:33, don't be fooled by those who say such things, for bad company corrupts good character. Right? So the Bible warns us over and over again, hey, be careful. How you hang out with is going to impact you. Adam and I, we were talking about this message last night. We were talking about how crazy it is that when they wrote the Bible, they were talking about emotional contagion. They probably didn't even know what it was, right? But like, it's in the Bible over and over and over again. Be mindful of your emotions. Show up in this way. Be careful who you hang out with. That's really cool. That's like in the Bible, but didn't even have a name until the 1990s is when we put the name emotional contagion on stuff. We said, hey, that's a real thing. That's like a science thing. We got a name for it now. I was born in the 90s. That's not long ago. Despite what Oliver would make me think. He tells me every day how old I am. It's really rude, honestly. So we really know that we are impacted by those around us. Emotional contagion is also a factor in crowd psychology or mob rule. So it talks about how people in mobs kind of lose their individuality. They start acting irrationally because they kind of caught up in this like crowd emotion that builds and builds and builds, and they're not able to control it anymore. And then they're kind of riding this wave, and it's kind of like a riptide, right? Like once the crowd starts moving this way, you can't get out of it because you're not an individual anymore. You're a group. And so the Bible tells us over and over again, right? Be cautious of who we surround ourselves with. But I think the fact that we're impacted by people is very like a double-edged sword kind of thing. I think in some ways it's really beautiful that we're impacted by those around us. We know that Jesus gives us the church, right? Jesus, when he died on the cross, the Holy Spirit comes and he tells us that we should gather together as believers, that the church itself is a gift. And we also know that when we come and we stand together with believers, our faith is fueled. We feel the impact of this collective faith and collective worship, and we're encouraged by that, and that's beautiful. We want that, right? It's a beautiful gift that we can meet together. There are a lot of scriptures that talk about this. I want to read, I think it's 3 of them. It might even be 2. I might take one out. So Hebrews 10, 24, 25, and let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, right? How we can encourage one another to go do that. Not giving up meeting together. Not giving up coming to church, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. So, right, all the more as we see the time that Jesus is going to return, we should be meeting together. It's important that we come and we be together as believers. 1 Thessalonians 5:11, therefore encourage one another and build one another up just as you are doing. Keep being with each other. It's important. The fact of like communal gathering is important to us. But like most things with emotional contagion, there's a danger side here, right? You have to be aware of kind of what the pitfalls can be. And so we need to make sure that we develop our own walks with Jesus. We need to make sure that our faith is driving our emotions. Our emotions shouldn't be driving our faith. And so if you know, it means that you can experience, not quite yet, Heather, go back. Thanks. Just hold there. You can experience as much of God alone in your car as you can when you come here. All the feelings, all the power, all the worship, it's all there. You can still experience it. You don't have to come here. There is beauty in coming here, right? But both things should exist in your walk. And so if you only ever meet Jesus in that way, when you're surrounded here by people, that might be less of your faith and more of emotions. And that's okay if that's where you are. Right? Like I want to be so clear that if that's where you are today in your faith, you should keep showing up, right? You should keep coming. But I do want to let you know there is something deeper for you. There is something more mature, and it might be time to take a step forward in your faith and say, I'm going to start owning my faith and my walk with Jesus. And I'm going to come here because I want to come here and I want to be supported by others. But then I'm also going to step outside in my own space, in my own life, in my quiet time, and know that Jesus will meet me there as well. So the last thing, Heather, now you can switch to it, is that we need to remain anchored to Jesus. In a world of chaos, Jesus is our anchor of peace. Right? He is our ultimate source of joy. We can't pour from an empty cup. So if we're not going back to Jesus and getting refilled, what are we even going to have to bring into the world? If you are just impacted by all the negativity in the world, you're not returning to Jesus to get refilled by all of his goodness, then what are you going to do? Like, what do you go from there? We call this cognitive crafting in my world. We got a lot of cool things for stuff. Like in the org psych phase, we're like, we'll name anything a cool term. So we call this cognitive crafting, which is really changing your perception of something. And you might be like, how is that changing your perception? Well, because I believe Jesus changes our perceptions, right? We look at things through our eyes. We look at the world through worldly eyes. And when as Christians we return to Jesus and we say, show me how I should be looking at this, we're changing our perception. We're saying, give me your perception, God. Show me how you see the world, how you see people. Cognitive crafting. You can take that big word and, whip that out some night at dinner. There is a study that talks about emotional contagion. It talks about practicing good emotional hygiene. That's just a cool way to say, practice some self-care. Like, I'm telling you, we got terms for everything. So practice good self-care. In the specific article I was reading, they talked about being able to come back to a space of calm. So doing things that bring you back to that, listening to music, reading a book, going for a walk, whatever it is. For us on that list should be spending time with Jesus, right? Coming back to your place of calm. Who is your place of calm in the storm? Who is your anchor? Who is your rock? Where do you stand when chaos comes? Jesus. So you need to go back to him. We need to go and do some self-care. Matthew 5:14 says, you are the light of the world. I don't have slides for these, Heather. This is my last one. So you just stay there. So Matthew 5:14, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify the Father in heaven. Where's our light coming from? Well, don't worry. Bible tells us that too. Psalm 27:1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is a stronghold in my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? You are called to give light to the world. And the Bible gave us the recipe for it. You got to give your light to others. Who are you getting your light from? The Lord. The Lord, it says, right? So come on back to Jesus. Yeah. We got to spend time sitting at the feet of Jesus, getting renewed and refreshed. This world is broken and it's hurt and it's chaos. And that has an impact on you and you can't hide from it all the time. This message is not to say you should sit in your house and you should hide from the world. That is not what this is to say. But it is to say you should be aware of what happens when you are around pain and hurt, and how do you get refreshed? How do you show up the next day, not carrying that into your next day? We need to be cautious about the pain that we take on for others. And so for many Christians here, we do sit with people in their pain, and we should, right? If you're on a leadership team here, you're listening to people's pain and you're sitting with them in their hurt. A lot of you guys, you're up at the coffee bar, people are coming off the street. There could be people here today. It's their first time and they have heartbreak and pain. Churches are shelters for people who are experiencing brokenness, and they should be. Right? People should come here and we should sit with them in that pain and we should walk through that pain with them. But what do you do after? If you just get up and you take on all that person's pain and you just walk to the next person, I got news for you. You're bringing some of that with you and you're probably giving it to the next person you talk to. So you're not as effective. We have to recognize that we have to care for ourselves. If we're going to go out into the world, which is broken, and we're going to sit with people in their pain, we have to know that we got to come back to Jesus and get renewed and refreshed so that we can be healthy to go out and do the next thing. Right? These are these things that they transfer to people, and then you're just out there inflicting pain. You're not even doing the thing you set out to do. Right? Galatians tells us, again, fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. You should be in those places when you go out and you see people and you talk to people. If you're walking into a room and you are just not in a good place, maybe take a second. It's okay to take a second. That's part of what my thesis wrote for kind of leadership considerations was you need to be aware if you're coming out of a meeting that's really hard that you don't blow into a staff meeting with that energy and kind of bring your whole team down. If you have a really hard meeting, take a minute, get yourself grounded and get yourself right before you go into the next thing. The other thing is that emotional contagion can be used for good, I will say. So we want to interrupt and stop negative contagion loops like anger, sadness. We kind of want to stop those things. We want to promote positive contagion loops. If you are full of joy, go out there and see people. Kickstart contagion loops for people. Like, that's a real thing. Go into a room and bring the light, right? Just like the Bible says, bring the light to people because it's so important. So I would really challenge you all as you go out in this next week, think about how you're showing up. Are you showing up like the light of Christ? Are you the salt of the earth? Are you showing up to people being everything that you need to be? Right? And there's time for sadness. I want to be clear that I'm not saying you got to show up happy all the time. That's not what I'm saying. But you should be purposeful about it, right? Jesus wept. Jesus was angry. We know that. We have emotions because God has emotions. That's a beautiful way in which we're created. But are you purposeful about it? Again, back to that emotional intelligence. Do you know how you're showing up in the room? Are you able to talk through that with people? Or are you just unaware, angry all day, blowing through your life, not dealing with it, and impacting all the people around you? Do you show up at home after a long day, slamming cabinets and sighing and being all cranky, and now your kids are all cranky, and you're like, I don't know why they're mad all the time? I've got news for you. I do. I do know why they're mad all the time, and you do too if you take a second. So it's okay to come in and be hurt. It's okay to say, like, I had a hard day. I need a minute. That is okay, and that is healthy, and you should do that. It's okay to call up your friend, your pastor, whoever, and say, I need to talk. We should, like I said, we should sit with each other in our pain, but we should be aware of what we're doing. We shouldn't be coming in totally unaware, and we definitely shouldn't be going in that place to others. I said last week that I was supposed to preach this message a year ago, and I didn't. I called Adam, and I said, I can't do it. I had gotten separated from my husband maybe 6 months before that. And right before I was supposed to preach this, I found out some other information that was really hurtful. And I was like, I can't get up on the stage and preach a message about emotional contagion when my heart is broken. Like, I'm in pieces right now. And if I get up on the stage and I preach this, what am I giving to all of you? So I said, I'm gonna take a year. I'm gonna take a whole year and get my life together. So then I come up here and I'm purposeful about what I give to the people who come here. And so that's what I'm challenging all of you today to do, is be purposeful and be mindful about how you show up in your communities, in your families, in your workplace. Make sure that you're showing Jesus to those around you in a beautiful way.
I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together, and every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Sing it out, there's nothing. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, nothing is better than you. And I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all. You still call me friend. Thank you, Lord, 'cause the God of the mountains is still God of the valley. And there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. Sing it out, you morning. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory.